I know many of you have participated or contributed to the Nepal earthquake. What I'm going to do today is tell you a story about what happened on the ground. Among many groups, I led a team, extremely passionate team of young people. And we coordinated with the remote mappers and the people on the ground. And that's the story I'm going to tell today. So you all know April 25th, 2015. And I just want to remind you the day it was really bad, devastating. When you look at this picture, you can see a variety of things, not just destruction. You can also see kinds of people who are participating in the response. There are trained military people and also, young, community members, youth, and they are all working together. The picture itself tells a lot. Well, what happened in Nepal earthquake is, so we do have 75 districts in Nepal, and the earthquake affected almost 40% of the country. It's a huge geographic area. The first challenge is, how do we use information for coordination and resource mobilization? It's very difficult to know what happens, what has already happened in such a large geographic area. You need coordination, of course. And then you need to mobilize your resources, and effectively, you have very limited resource. For all that to happen, you need good information. The second challenge is, the situation on the ground is changing rapidly. So the building that was standing a few hours ago could be, the falling down due to the aftershock. Then how do you collect such a massive amount of data? The data which is rapidly changing. That's the second challenge. And the third challenge is, every disaster is a very time-compressed activity. You don't have time. You have to do things pretty fast. So what is the fastest source of information? Speed matters, right? Every hour, every minute is important. And then finally, it's a huge problem. No single institution or group or individual can solve this problem. We need to bring lots of different stakeholders together. Government, normally we expect government to solve the major problems. Even for government, to cover such a large area is not possible. So these are the questions that in reflection, that I wanted to, frame here as part of my talk. This is coming from our experience. Well, then I like this quote from Levy. He wrote it in a book called Collective Intelligence. This is particularly true in disaster situation, and it is also true in normal situation. No one knows everything. Everyone knows something. Disasters are very local phenomena, and the people who are living next to the disaster, they have the richest set of information. How can we collect that information? How can it make it available to the relief and response workers? So all of the work that we carried after the disaster as part of our response is, in a way, inspired by this quote. Well, now the story begins. The picture I show here is a real picture. So you probably might not be able to see me. I am there. So we were hit by the earthquake on 25th. It was middle of the day, and we spent several hours, just in open space, because there were too many aftershocks coming. I felt as if the whole earth is, shaking. And then when it came the evening, then I started thinking about, where do we spend night? I do have a 10-year-old son, 82-year-old mom. Now, what do we do? It's already 6 o'clock in the evening. Well, then I went to a nearby school. The school did have open space, and set up tent. And in the meantime, one of my colleagues He's Nirab, by the way. He came to the tent and said, we have to do something, and we have to do it now. Because Kathmandu Living Lab had contributed even to typhoon in Philippines. So we did have some experience, but now it has happened to our own country, to our own people. How can we help? Was the question that we discussed. So, and we decided, okay, let's meet tomorrow morning at our office, Kathmandu Living Lab's office. This is a small parking lot outside our office. The building was badly damaged, so we couldn't, of course, stay inside. And we managed to grab a few chairs. And then it's a very interesting story. There are walls around this parking lot, and we literally measured, if there is aftershock, so that the wall doesn't fall and kill you, So if you look at this is literally at the center of the parking lot. So and that day we declared it as a situation room, Kathmandu Living Labs Situation Center. And then slowly, different people from different backgrounds, particularly the youth community, started to join our effort. So the parking lot was insufficient. Then we moved to a cafe, because the cafe was non-operational. There was no client. Nobody used to come to a cafe. So if you look at this is outside the cafe. More and more people started to join. And then, one of the challenges to organize people, everybody wants to be part of this. Everybody wants to contribute, but you don't have anybody to define tasks for you. So idea was, why don't you pick a task that you feel more comfortable with, right? So if you look at this, so we generally, put different tasks on a whiteboard, and even new volunteers are coming, and this big one, right? And we did have a very minimal supervision, of course, because there is no time to plan, to supervise. And there was a tremendous, contribution from the international mapping community. By the way, can I ask this question? How many of you, contributed to Nepal mapping? Can you raise your hand? Yeah, pretty good number. So, so it was. If you look at this, the earthquake was on 25th, and within the first 72 hours, we had already more than 2,000 people mapping Nepal. So I sometimes compare it with Nepal's Department of Survey. We do have 3,000 people in the government mapping agency. So, it's almost 66% of the national mapping agency within the first 48 hours. It's amazing. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, the highest number of people have participated in mapping the Nepal earthquake. It's 9,000 people in about a month's time. This is amazing. And if you look at this, so all those blinking areas were mapped after the earthquake. So this is Kathmandu Valley. This is another city, Pokhara. These major cities had already been mapped before the earthquake by the local team. But the villages, the districts outside Kathmandu were not mapped. So there is where we desperately needed map. And these people, those 9,000 people, helped us map those periphery, those districts. So the question is, so what? The speakers this morning have emphasized on the use of the map. I think we do have a lot of emphasis on the production, creation of the map, and then we do little emphasis on the analysis, and then very little, effort in the use of data. I think that's the problem. So, and then, those 9,000 people mapped, a lot of things happened. Then, what's their use? Let me take you through a few pictures. It's very interesting that in Nepal earthquake, OpenStreetMap almost happened to be the default map. Let me show you this. This was a map printed by Canadian Army. They were staying inside a big 5-star hotel, and they were just pulling data from OpenStreetMap. and printing those maps in hundreds and hundreds of copies. We didn't know about it. We just focused, to coordinate the effort map. One day, these folks came to our situation room, literally hugged us, and then they said, "Thank you. Your map was really helpful." USAID also used this map. USAID does have a DART, disaster assistant team. They're using the OpenStreetMap data to plan the operation. This is a map produced by Map Action, is a British NGO. Whenever there is a disaster, the UN system brings them, and they were stationed within the UN house. They pull data. They were also producing maps. This is the map produced by World Food Programme, again using OpenStreetMap. This is the map produced by Nepal's Department of Survey. It's very interesting because the government map was outdated, and this was the only source of map data that was most current. Map produced by ICCM. This is a map produced by Nepal Red Cross. All these maps use OpenStreetMap as base. So what is most interesting is the Nepal Army made the most effective use of this information. So I took it from a report written by Nepal Army. They say the crowdsourced data, OpenStreetMap, and also QuakeMap, which I will be showing you in a minute, was heavily used. So that's about OpenStreetMap. And then we had also deployed a system. It's basically a Shahidi deployment. We develop, we customize it. And basically the idea is very simple. It's a reporting system. So people would just report their need. And somehow it became very popular. It wasn't planned. We didn't have an idea, We just wanted to do it. And once the Nepal Army joined this effort, they started to download information from QuakeMap every 2 hours. And Army established their own validation unit within the Nepal Army. And that changed everything. The trust. When Nepal Army started to use information, a lot of other organizations also started to use information, the element of trust here. So this is one example of the report. Some of the reports are several pages long. I just want to show you. Putting a report on the map is not that difficult, but each of those reports has a story. Reports changing. Our validation team is validating. Every time some action has been taken to the report, there is some update, some additional information is there. I'm just showing you one single report, several pages. So some of the people this morning said technology is only part of this whole thing. I totally agree. Then these are the comments from people, okay, what is happening in Kathmandu Living Labs is rocking, We didn't know all these things. We're just doing, we're so immersed, we're just busy. And after a few days, we started reading all those, posts. And then I just want to give you some sense of, the movement that was already in Nepal, before the earthquake. A lot of people don't know this. There was a very strong OSM community in Nepal before the earthquake. We had already mapped major cities densely, and that really happened to be useful after the earthquake. I just want to show you, few pictures. So look at this Kathmandu. These are all done before the earthquake. So reaching out to schools, colleges, universities, major INGOs. Sometimes it's just girls mapping party in Nepal because we want to make sure that we do have sufficient number of girls taking part in mapping. So even with farmers. When I go to talk and when I meet people, they ask me one question, Nama, what did you learn from this exercise? It's an extremely difficult question. There is a saying from, there is a quote from a famous knowledge management expert, Michael Polanyi. He says, you know more than you can tell. It's impossible to tell everything, because too many things happened. But still, I try to, put few points. So the past speaker just mentioned, invest before disaster. Don't wait for it. Nepal did have a pretty good OSM community. Major city was already mapped. And we were already working with government, major organizations. That relationship helped a lot. So it's not the data, data, existence of the data, but also relationship network before the disaster. And then, government, citizens, all stakeholders needs to be brought together, of course. And then, how can we bring data, technology, and people together? I just want to put this, because this very nicely captures our experience. Later, she studies sociology, she's a sociologist of technology. She says, the airplane doesn't fly, airlines. We might think the Boeing 757 is flying, but there are pilots, there are maintenance people, there are ground staff, there are marketing people, all these things make airline, and it's actually airlines that fly, not the airplane. That's our experience. It's not just data, it's not just map, it's relationship, it's trust, it's network, collaboration, all these things. And it's extremely difficult, very difficult to prescribe how to do these things, but we have to do it. So this is my final slide. Learning from the experience last year, so we are trying to put these lessons in a city called Pokhara. Pokhara is about 200 kilometers west from Kathmandu. So we're trying whether the lessons we have learned from last year can actually be applied. So we do have an active project called Prepare Pokhara. It is a partnership between Kathmandu Living Labs, American Association of Geographers, US State Department, and many other government organizations in Pokhara. With that, thank you very much.